Taking off to D.C. because we're going to be at the inauguration of the 45th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. Really excited to be there and really excited to kind of show Aiden a little bit about D.C. as well. We're going to be hanging over there for a while, so it's going to be great. And Senator Roy Blunt is one of those individuals who is helping make the inauguration great again. Senator Roy Blunt, at Roy Blunt, looking forward to seeing you, sir, too. I know you've been working hard to make things go off without a hitch, so I appreciate you, as always, my friend.
Well, without a hitch may be too much to hope for, but we're prepared for most hitches that could occur. And, this is a great opportunity, of course, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for me to chair the inauguration, and I think we're looking at a really important moment for the country. I saw President-elect Trump, and Vice President Pence last night. I saw him on Friday in New York and last night in Washington, and I think that he has the disruptive potential here in a good way to really bring the kind of change the country wants and the country needs. And I'm not sure anybody else running for president would have been able to bring the same new element to this whole process of how you look at things and what the government can and should do. And I think, interestingly, even more than people in the federal government, the national media and the media that covers Washington is having a really hard time figuring out just how different he is, and that he does not communicate like everybody else who's been president, but the people of the country clearly understand what he's saying, and most confused only the national media, which is what I told a couple of different groups of reporters yesterday, that the American people understand that he's talking through this process of how he gets to the goals to change the country, and at the same time, he's learning, like all presidents do, that there's a constitutional process to go through, but I'm very optimistic.
It's interesting to watch the media operate, and even some Democrats, they just continually, if I had to draw a picture of them, they would look like the dog that stares into the cone on the vinyl record. They just don't understand what's happening here. And honestly, as we said when you were running for re-election, I believe that you and President Trump are a perfect match because especially when it comes to revamping healthcare, especially when it comes to energy policy, aside from people were saying, well, people are there too long. But you know what? There's a benefit to having people who know a little bit about policy, who can help articulate the vision that Donald Trump had for changing healthcare and for our energy policy. And I think you guys are a perfect match in that regard.
Well, I hope so. And, in the last election where people really wanted change, it was very important to make the case that even though I'd been here, I'd been the person fighting for the kind of change they want. You can have somebody brand new who doesn't want change, that thinks that Obamacare was just fine and more taxes and more regulations was just fine. Of course, that's not what I've been doing or talking about or working for. And another thing, Jamie, too, it's important to know how to get things done, but in this particular moment, it may be equally important to know how to get things undone. These out-of-control regulations, the president will have a lot of ability with executive orders to reverse executive orders, but there's a lot of potential for the Congress to use for the first time effectively the Congressional Review Act, which almost anything that the White House did or these government bureaucrats did after the 1st of July is available now to the Congressional Review Act, which means we could put a bill on the president's desk that says we don't want to do that, and the president signs that law, and suddenly whatever rule and regulation has been out there goes away, and then the new team is in place to look at whether we really need to change current regulations or not. But talk about executive overreach in this regulatory authority. and we can reverse this, and I intend to. And one of the things I'm telling the leader and others in the Senate is that if anything we can get our hands on that needs to be undone, the one thing we can't say is we don't have time to do it. We need to take every ounce of time we have. If that means we're working 18 or 24 hours a day, 6 days a week, I'm certainly prepared to do that in this first 6 months when we have all these things available to us.
Senator Blunt, when it comes to planning the inauguration, of course, you as the chairman of the inaugural committee, is there anything we should be looking for this time around? I'm understanding that, obviously Donald Trump is not someone who does everything by the book. Is there something special that we're going to see or something maybe unusual that kind of breaks the mold when it comes to inaugurations?
Well, we'll see. I think what happens at the Capitol is largely by the book.
Yeah.
What the president says, of course, makes a big difference, and that's up to him. But, I think President Obama had a dozen inaugural balls. President Trump only wants to have 3. He's really very focused on getting to work, and only in the last couple of weeks, I think, has he really taken time to think about how important the particular moment is of the peaceful transfer of power.
Right.
It's something we do better than anybody else, and we've done it longer than anybody else. And more often than not, since World War II, not only do you change presidents, but you change political parties. Only one time since World War II has either political party held the White House 3 times in a row. And so seeing that happen is good for us, but it's good for the millions of people that watch it all over the world. And I think he's thinking about that. I was at an event last night with he and 150 diplomats who represent their countries in Washington, and that was a unique event, which most presidents don't have, but he wanted to let them know that it's a new day, that he's interested in working with their countries, and he's interested in them knowing if their countries want to do bad things, he's not for their countries doing things that we would see as harmful.
Can I ask you another question about the entertainment? Because I know there are a lot of people who say that they're refusing to perform at the inauguration, but my question is, and the question of many people who listen to the show is, have they really actually been asked? Because I notice a lot of people are refusing, but I'm not quite sure they've actually ever been asked.
I think that's exactly right. I think
okay.
Most of the people that are refusing haven't been asked. I've been watching some of these just to be sure we had everything in line. And, President Bush, 41 and 43, the principal people that were singing the songs to be sung were people in military uniforms. Just a few years ago, this idea that you have to have some big-name entertainer come, or otherwise somehow people aren't supporting the inauguration. It's not about entertainment, and It's not about big names. It's about this example. So Reagan, Jamie, in 1981 at his inauguration, which was the first one on the west side of the Capitol, the side that as we begin to see the crowds grow over the last 30 years, he said, what we do here is commonplace and miraculous. Commonplace because we've done it every 4 years since 1789, and miraculous for the same reason. We've done it every 4 years, and in the middle of the Civil War, in the middle of World War II, in the middle of bad economic times, nothing gets in the way of the miraculous nature of the Constitution and constitutional government. And this is actually the biggest moment every 4 years we celebrate that.
Boy, nicely put there, Senator Blunt. Now, one quick question, too, about the no-shows, the people who are not going to be there. What happens to the tickets? Like, for instance, for a John Lewis who's not going to be appearing, and I think 53 other Democrats from the House, all the senators are going to be there, are not going to be there. What happens to their tickets?
Well, there are about 1,600 people on that platform anyhow, and, if there'd be a few tickets available that wouldn't have been otherwise to people a president-elect may want to invite, but generally we almost always have several members of Congress that don't attend for health or weather or other reasons.
Yeah.
I don't know that there have ever been this many members of the Congress say we're not attending because we don't like the result.
Right.
But that's not a good message to send. I have a lot of respect for John Lewis. I consider him a friend of mine. But the message we ought to be sending on this day is that democracy works, and America is an example of how it works, not some discussion about how
right.
a person who everybody knows won the election and won it handily is somehow questioning that presidency, as frankly too many people have questioned President Bush and others, whether, well, it wasn't fair for this reason or that reason. That's not the message we should be sending on Inauguration Day or frankly any other day. We don't have to agree with the president to realize that they were elected president.
I think the media has this fantasy that there are going to be like loads of empty seats that they can zero their cameras on, but I'm glad to hear that that's not going to be the case. And Senator Blunt, thank you so much for inviting us and allowing us to be able to have access to this wonderful event. So I'll be up there with Aiden. I look forward to having him shake your hand and thank you in appreciation for all you've done. And Senator Blunt, looking forward to seeing you up there.
All right, buddy. Our whole team is looking forward to seeing you and Aiden, and Abby and I are too.
Okay, my friend. Looking forward to it, and thank you again for being with us this morning.